late and she hasn't been able to get in touch with Mr. Porter.
Good morning to my fellow regents and President Caboni.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. This is our second Zoom meeting in these unprecedented times. We'll start off by asking Secretary Brinkley to call the roll, please.
Thank you, sir. Regent Bale.
Present.
Regent Ball.
Present.
Regent Brinkley is present. Regent Ernst.
Present.
Regent Harris.
Present.
Regent Higdon.
Present.
Regent Henson. Do we know if Julie's trying to join?
She is running behind. She's coming.
Okay. Regent McKinney.
Present.
Regent Nichols.
Present.
Regent Porter. Chair Higdon, at present, we have 8 regents present representing a quorum of the board.
David, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. I was trying to get on audio and video when I was screaming at you. Everybody in my office heard, but you didn't.
Oh, well, in that case, Mr. Chair, we have 9 regents present representing a quorum of the board.
Thank you, Secretary Brinkley. We do have a quorum, so we can start our second quarter board meeting. Again, good morning to everyone. I hope you're doing well, safe, and ready to have a vigorous board meeting this morning.
Chair Higdon, may I have a point of personal privilege, please?
Sure, President Caboni.
Good morning, everyone. So pleased to see your happy, smiling, and safe virtual faces. I want to take a moment this morning to begin our meeting with a reminder that it is commencement day and to remember that this is the week we celebrate why we work so hard the other 51 weeks out of the year, and that we have thousands of students who will have their degrees conferred this afternoon. So just a reminder of where we are as days begin to bleed into one another. I wanted to take a moment and introduce to you on his first day, official day of work with us, our new Enrollment and Student Engagement Vice President, Ethan Logan, who is joining us up from Texas Tech, who has had a long career there in enrollment, student success. And Ethan, if you would say a couple of words to put you on the spot. We're glad that you're having your first day. I'm sorry that it's virtual, but we look forward to seeing you in person very, very soon.
Thank you, Dr. Caboni, and thank you to the board. Very excited to join this austere family of education, and I'm very excited about moving to Kentucky here this next week. So we're very excited to be a part of the Hilltopper tradition, and we're excited to begin work with the institution. It's an interesting time to start a new role at a distance, but or in remote access, but the interactions that I've had with the community thus far have been so very heartwarming and enthusiastic in the support of students and their strive for education with the institution. And I look forward to working with this group going forward and being a part of this wonderful institution. And I thank you for this opportunity. Glad to be a part.
Thank you, Ethan. One other note, and I do this at the beginning of the meeting because I think it may shape some of our conversations to come. This week, a week ago today, we shared with, beginning with the Staff Senate Executive Group, Faculty Senate, Student Government, obviously the Regents electronically and one-on-one, the Budget Executive Committee's recommendation around budget. And as we promised, we spent some time with our governance organizations and have been listening. There's been a great deal of feedback during the past 7 days, and I want to share with you that the leadership group has heard at least around one of the more contentious issues. And we're going to make a change to that budget recommendation today. You will recall that there is a $2.4 million item that it references staff faculty salary reductions. And we decided that given the size of the budget reduction and so many questions around that item, that we would take that $2.4 million and instead of hitting that goal through salary reductions, we would move that to the decentralized reduction targets that we'll have to hit. So for those of you listening and concerned about that, I just wanted to make that announcement before we got started today. And with that, Mr. Chair, thank you for the appointed personal privilege.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll have questions and discussions as we go through our agenda today, and particularly in the area of the budget. So if you'll just kind of hang on to your questions, and as we get to it in order, we'll take it up. I need to read a statement on the consent agenda before we start our committee reports. The committees of the board met in April to discuss each item on their respective agendas and recommended setting the agenda items to the full board for action. Items EX1, EX2, and AA4, AA5, AA7 were not presented at the committee meetings and shall be removed from the consent agenda for further discussion and a separate vote. With that being said, we'll now turn to the first agenda item, that being the executive committee. And we'll take up executive item number 1, having to do with approval of an addendum to employment agreement between Western Kentucky University and Deborah T. Wilkins. Those materials have been furnished to the board. President Caboni, do you have comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, beginning July 1st, 2020, Deborah Wilkins will transition to the role of senior advisor and interim Title IX coordinator, where she'll continue to serve the university and our students. In addition to continued involvement in ongoing litigation, she'll help grow a program to provide affordable legal services to WKU students. And then in her role as interim Title IX coordinator, Deborah will oversee the university's compliance and educational efforts with regard to Title IX of the Higher Education Act. As you may have seen, there is new guidance, and that will become an ever more important issue for us. We appreciate her continued service and dedication to WKU. And I have heard there may be some questions about the way in which we're going to fund this position for 2 years. It's about $80,000 in salary plus benefits. And I will remind folks that I have an empty vice president slot that has not been filled. And then there are other positions also that have not been filled. But more importantly, there will be opportunities during the course of the year to identify reduction opportunities, spending avoidance. And I think this is a good example of how we manage through in our new budget model. We don't have to decide today what we do to hit reduction targets. We have 12 months to manage to a number. I think that's what a mature organization does. And I oversee totaling probably about $5 million in budgets, 130,000 total each year. It's a very small percentage of that. We should be able to manage toward it. For the budget item description itself, there's a reason the president isn't usually allowed to write those himself. And for those who were confused by those items, I apologize for the lack of clarity. I hope that clears some of that up.
Thank you, President Caboni. To follow appropriate rules of order, we will now entertain a motion, a second, and then of course move thereafter into discussion. Is there a motion for approval of the addendum to the employment agreement?
So moved.
Was that Regent McKinney moved, and the second was, I didn't catch who seconded it.
George?
I'll second it.
George Nichols, Regent
Yes.
Nichols second. We now have a motion and a second and call for discussion. Anyone with comments or questions? Hearing none, I will now call for Secretary Brinkley to conduct the vote.
On the matter of EX1, Regent Bale,
Yes.
Regent Ball,
Yes.
Regent Brinkley is no. Regent Ernst, Regent Ernst, you're muted, buddy.
Nope.
Regent Harris,
Abstain.
Regent Higdon,
Yes.
Regent Henson,
No.
Regent McKinney,
Yes.
Regent Nichols.
Yes.
Did David Porter show up?
The indication is no.
Okay.
He has not shown up yet.
2, 3, 4, 5. Chair Higdon, the vote is 5 in favor, 3 opposed, 1 abstention. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. 5, 3, and 1.
Thank you to Secretary Brinkley. With that, the motion passes. And now we will proceed to EX2, which is the consideration of approval of employment agreement between the university and Andrea P. Anderson. Mr. President, any comments or introduction to that item?
Regent Higdon, Chair Higdon, Andrea Anderson, who has served as WKU's Assistant General Counsel for nearly 5 years, will assume the role of General Counsel effective July 1, 2020. Now, prior to coming to WKU in 2015, Andrea was a partner at the law firm Carrick, Batchert, PSC, and she received her JD from, I'm not sure I can say this out loud, but the University of Kentucky College of Law, but we forgive her because her undergraduate degree is from Western Kentucky University. Andrea has been intricately involved in many of the university's legal activities in her role as Assistant General Counsel. This appointment provides us with the opportunity to retain talent, to reward her hard work, to support business continuity, and particularly in this time of great uncertainty. Hopefully, congratulations, Andrea. Well deserved.
Thank you, President Cavoni. We will now proceed with a motion for approval and a second, and then we will proceed into discussions. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Regent Nichols,
Second.
second by Regent Bale. Call for discussion. Any regent have a question or item of discussion? Hearing none, Secretary Brinkley, will you conduct the roll call vote?
Vote is for agenda item EX2, Regent Bale,
Yes.
There's like,
Regent Ball,
Yes.
Regent Brinkley is no. Regent Ernst,
No.
Regent Harris,
I also abstain.
Regent Higdon,
Yes.
Regent Henson,
Yes.
Regent McKinney,
Yes.
Regent Nichols,
Yes.
Chair Higdon, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 yes, 2 no, 1 abstention.
Thank you, Secretary Brinkley. We have approval. Congratulations to Andrea. And congratulations to Deborah. That concludes our action items. We now will proceed to the information items. President Cavoni, are you going to introduce the first item, or do we move to Susan immediately?
Let's move to Susan immediately. I'll introduce the information item. Susan.
What?
If Susan is ready, is this where we're going to do the budget?
It should be appointment of nominating committee if you're going in order.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm so anxious to get the budget. I'd like to, typically at this time of year, the chair appoints a nominating committee for our officer slate. We have had excellent services from a committee for the last 2+ years. I would like to appoint Regent Nichols as chair, Regent Ball and Regent Porter as members of the nominating committee to present a slate of officers and recommendations for committees at our June 26th meeting. Next, we will finally move to budget item, and Susan, if you'll present that information.
Sure. So Anthony, can you help me with getting the slide deck pulled up?
Just a moment.
So good morning, everyone. As I think most of you know, we've spent the last week going through this BEC recommendation with the campus and constituents. And so this is our opportunity to talk about this with the full regent. So this is what I'm going to go through today. So first, look at what the budget development process actually looked like. Projected revenues, projected expenditures, and then an overview of the BEC recommended balancing strategies. And then finally, next steps. Next slide. So budget development process. So next slide. So as we promised, basically when I first came to campus, we will fully implement the RAMP RCM budget model on July 1. So part of that model is having these governance committees in place. So we have the operating allocation committee that's co-chaired by Belinda Higginbotham, who is our bursar, and Christy Smith, who is our interim CFO. We also have the capital allocation committee, and that's chaired by Brian Russell, who is our chief facilities officer. And then the budget executive committee is chaired by myself and Provost Stevens. And again, as we talked about early on, we purchased the new budget software, Axiom, and these allocations will now be managed through the new budget software. So next. So I think it was important to see the number of people we have involved in this process across campus. So I just wanted to give you a flavor for the committee composition. So on the operating allocation committee, we have Dean Shook, who is our dean of the business school, Susan DeVries, who is our dean of libraries, Guy Jordan, he's chair of the University Senate Budget Committee, Amanda Tribune, who is our VP for philanthropy, Tuesday Hilvig, who is our director of institutional research, Cheryl Davis, associate VP and interim dean of the graduate school, Emily England, who is a staff Senate representative, Todd Stewart, our director of athletics, Bruce Schulte, associate VP for strategy, performance, and accountability, and Greg Hagparth, who is our assistant VP for information technology. So moving to the next slide.
Susan,
Uh-huh.
may I interrupt for a second? And I have made a error. This is actually should have been under the Finance and Budget Committee information item. So can I ask you to kind of hold up for a second and wait
sure.
for Regent McKinney to call his committee, and that should actually come under his domain. I apologize.
Oh, not a problem.
Is this a good break point for that?
Sure, not a problem.
Jason, I apologize. So getting back to our agenda, for the executive committee, the next information item should have been the bylaws ad hoc committee report, Secretary Brinkley.
We have been continuing to work on that. I have spent about 12 hours in the last 2 weeks. I have only had time to share with one additional region on that committee because I've been working on other items related to the document dump on this meeting. So there will be additional information and hopefully final results that we can work into the special meeting on June 26th.
Do any of the regents have questions or comments to address to the bylaws ad hoc committee? David, do you think we'll have matters to take up?
I believe we will have actionable matters, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Hearing no other comments from the regents, we will conclude our executive committee portion of the agenda. Again, my apologies for bringing in the budget a little premature. With that being said, we will now turn to the Academic Affairs Committee. Regent Bell chairs that committee. Regent Bell.
Thank you, Chair Higdon. And as most are aware, the Academic Affairs Committee has been active, and we had many requests for certificate program at our last full meeting, and that whole process is evolving. I want to preface our actions today by saying that Provost Stevens and her group are actively working through this new process that is partially a result of the CAPE process. And later this year, hopefully at one of our summer meetings, we will actually have some information regarding how this process is evolving and how the new process for approval of these things will be conducted. That being said, with the exception of action items 4, 5, and 7, all of the items 3 through 12 were presented and discussed at committee meetings both on April 17th and April 23rd. Those other items, therefore, are open for a consent vote. But first, I'll ask if there's any further discussion on any of those items. If not, I'll entertain a motion for consent vote.
Dr. Bell,
yes.
Can I make a point of information to Andrea or Randall or anyone that could answer this? Can we, can I make a motion to approve all of these action items via unanimous consent rather than going through each individual line item?
Yes, all items except for 4, 5, and 7 that have been discussed.
So can we group all those together?
Except for items 4, 5, and 7. Those have to be voted on separately.
Okay.
And all the other action items 3 through 12 would be consent. So I take it that you are making that motion.
Yes, so moved.
All right. I have a motion and a second for approval by consent of all action items 3 through 12, except for 4, 5, and 7. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right.
Dr. Bell, I think because of the Zoom meeting, I think Secretary Brinkley does have to
go through each person separately. Yes. Okay. So again, for the consent, we'll have an individual vote. Secretary Brinkley, I'll turn that over to you.
I apologize for the added detail. It just gives some clarity.
Yeah.
Motion was Regent Harris. Second was Regent Ernst. Is that correct, Chair?
I believe that's right.
Okay. Regent Bale,
Yes.
Regent Ball,
Yes.
Regent Brinkley is yes. Regent Ernst,
Yes.
Regent Harris,
Yes.
Regent Higdon,
Yes.
Regent Henson,
Yes.
Regent McKinney,
Yes.
Regent Nichols.
Yes.
Philip, there are 9 yeses. Motion carries.
Okay. We'll now turn our attention to action item 4, which is approval of the epidemiology graduate certificate. Is there any discussion?
So moved on a motion to approve.
Second.
All right. Secretary Brinkley, we need to go through these individually votes
Yes, sir.
too, I believe.
Regent Bale,
Yes.
Regent Ball,
Yes.
Regent Brinkley is yes. Regent Ernst,
Yes.
Regent Harris,
Yes.
Regent Higdon,
Yes.
Regent Henson,
Yes.
Regent McKinney,
Yes.
Regent Nichols.
Yes.
Chair Bale, the vote is 9-0 on AA4. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. We next turn to action item 5, which is approval of the accredited financial counselor undergraduate certificate.
Make a motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second. Second from Brinkley, sorry.
All right. Entertain that vote.
Stand by. Sorry, Philip. I'm catching up on my text here. All right. Regent Bale,
Yes.
Regent Ball,
Yes.
Regent Brinkley is yes. Regent Ernst,
Yes.
Regent Harris,
Yes.
Regent Higdon,
Yes.
Regent McKinney,
Yes.
Regent Nichols. Regent Nichols?
I'm sorry. Yes, I was on mute.
Sorry, sir. Regent Bale, AA5 carries 9-0.
Brian, David,
Yes,
call my name, dear. I vote yes. Just.
I'm sorry. I will tell you that the Harris, Higdon, Henson trio in order has confused me a little, and I apologize, Julie, and will never make that mistake again.
I hope not. Well, also, David, what confuses me is you say Harris, and that's my maiden name, and I always want to override Will.
I understand. I will amend how I present that information.
Action item 7 involves the approval of workplace communication undergraduate certificate.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Secretary Brinkley.
Stand by. Regent Philip Bale,
Yes.
Regent Linda Ball,
Yes.
Regent David Brinkley is yes. Regent Klaus Ernst,
Yes.
Regent Will Harris,
Yes.
Chair Freddie Higdon,
Yes.
Regent Julie Harris Henson,
Yes.
Regent Jason McKinney,
Yes.
Regent George Nichols.
Yes.
AA7 carries 9-0. Thank you, sir.
All right. In summary, all these certificate programs that have been passed, I think when you read through the materials are going to serve Western well and do meet the spirit and intent of the CAPE process. One final thing I would like to mention too, having just been part of the academic restart committee, I'd like to report to everyone what a good process that's been. Our Dean, Corrine Murphy, has done a spectacular job of chairing that committee, and it has produced a very thoughtful document that is a difficult thing to do in this rapidly fluid environment that we are all considering toward the restart of our university in the fall. But I do want to send out kudos to everybody that's on that committee. And it is so obvious that Western has a tremendous group of faculty and staff and others who are wanting what's best for Western and our students. With that, Mr. Chairman, I believe that concludes the business of the academic committee.
Thank you, Chair Bell, and much appreciation to you and the Academic Affairs Committee and for your services on the Restart Committee. Now we'll turn to Finance and Budget. And Jason, again, my apologies for getting into your lane of travel a little bit.
No problem, Freddie. We have 4 items on our agenda today. Items FB 1, 2, 3, and 4 were all presented at the presented and approved at the committee meetings. Would anybody like to remove any of these items from the consent agenda for individual discussion and vote?
I would like to have an individual discussion on FB3.
Okay. Anybody else?
Can we remove FB2 and FB4?
Okay, so we will individually vote on each of these then. Okay, so the first item on our agenda then will be FB1, approval of accountant's report on application of agreed upon procedures. Do I hear a motion for approval of this?
Motion. Or
Second.
moved. Sorry, so moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second from Dr. Bell, I believe.
Motion
Does
for
anybody
Brinkley,
have-
second Bale.
Yes.
Sorry.
Do we have any discussion or questions on this item? All right, hearing none. Regent Brinkley. Regent Brinkley, would you please call the vote?
Yes, sir. Regent, this is on FB1. Regent Bale.
Yes.
Regent Ball.
Yes.
Regent Brinkley is yes. Regent Ernst.
Yes.
Regent Harris.
Yes.
Regent Higdon.
Yes.
Regent Harris Henson.
Yes.
Regent McKinney.
Yes.
And Regent Nichols.
Yes.
Regent McKinney, FB1 carries 9-0.
All right. Thank you, David. The next item on our agenda is FB2, acceptance for the filing of the statement of revenue and expenditures for the third quarter of the fiscal year. Do I have a motion for FB2?
So moved.
Thank you, George. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Bell. Do we have any discussions, questions for FB2?
Well, they want to remove them.
David, did you want to say anything on FB2 for the removal? I just want to make sure I'm not missing you.
I apologize. I lost my own personal connectivity for a second and missed the motion. Who made the motion, Jason?
George made the motion. Dr. Bell made the second.
Apologize.
That's okay.
Jason, to be clear, I had no discussion. I wanted it pulled out for an individual vote.
Very good. All right, hearing no further discussion, David, would you please call the vote on FB2?
Stand by, I'm getting the right piece of paper in front of me. FB2, Regent Bale,
Yes.
Regent Ball,
Yes.
Regent Brinkley is no, Regent Ernst,
Yes.
Regent Harris,
Yes.
Regent Higdon,
Yes.
Regent Henson,
Yes.
Regent McKinney,
Yes.
Regent Nichols.
Yes.
Jason, it carries 8-1.
All right, thank you, David. All right, the next item on our agenda is FB3, approval of the personnel actions. Do I have a motion for FB3?
So moved.
Thank you, Linda.
Second.
And thank you, George. All right, do we have any discussion or questions concerning FB3?
Yes, I want to make a couple of comments on this. FB3 contains a whole number of different salary changes for various reasons. The thing I want to point out is there's a number of men's football coaches' salaries on there. And why do I want to point them out? Well, because we are sending here a very strange signal. So let me give you some faculty perspective on this. These, assuming that most of these coaches are relatively new because we have a new football coach, we hired a new staff, and they are essentially getting an increase, which is at least around 17%. That is a larger increase than any faculty member will ever see in their career. There's a whole bunch of promotion increases in there for faculty, but these faculty members have earned them over a period of 5-6 years. This is not basically given after 1 or 2 years. Furthermore, if you convert them either in absolute dollars or in percentage dollars, this is by far a smaller increase than we give to these coaches. The highest faculty reward, I'm one of them, the distinguished professorship, doesn't give any salary bump. It gives a stipend, which is given for a certain number of years, and then it essentially goes away. So no faculty member can ever achieve a raise of this percentage, of this magnitude. Furthermore, to me, it seems like we don't know what will happen in the fall. The football program is probably the program which, in terms of subvention in our budget model, has the highest subvention numbers of any unit on campus. And nevertheless, we see it fit to give it a very large percentage raise to salaries. Even so, we don't know if we will even play football in the fall. And I think the signal we're sending here is the wrong one. Are we really saying we are a university that should prioritize academics, or what are we saying? I know that this money comes from the foundation, that those are not E&G funds, but that argument is somewhat flawed because we do subvent men's football with E&G funds. And so if they have extra money, then we could reduce the subvention through E&G funds. And so I think at this point of time, this is a wrong signal to send.
Thank you, Klaus. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say?
I'm concerned that we are approving salaries, several of which, well, I need to rescind my comment from what was prepared because I learned that the tiered salary reduction is not taking place. So my comment was around approving salaries that are active July 1st and then discounting them in our next board meeting. So after remembering what was already presented this morning by the president, I'm withdrawing my comment.
Jason, I have the utmost respect for the faculty that is probably, you know, you have to say that's really the value proposition of Western Kentucky University and every university across America is the knowledge that they bestow on our students that come there and what they present. And I think every one of us would agree, we wish we could give more money to our faculty. And I think Klaus raises some very legitimate points in terms of how the process and the system works. The unfortunate thing in this is it's not an apples to apples comparison. There is no football coach, basketball coach anywhere in the country that has tenure. They can't apply for tenure. They win, they stay. They lose, they're fired. And the process works that way. They have a different approach. We're asking them to teach our student athletes. We're asking them to help them become productive men and women. We want them to do that. But it's not the same as a value proposition that we get from the knowledge of our faculty. I think all of us wish it were a more fair and balanced system. Unfortunately, it's not. And again, I want to acknowledge and recognize the comments that were made and the support that I have, and I know that all of us have for the faculty. But in the realities of the model that we have at universities across America, this is sort of what we're up against, and the recognition that the public relations value that our athletic programs bring to the college, the assistance in recruiting students to our college, and the revenue sources that it creates for the university. I want to acknowledge it, but I just think that we got to make sure we understand the balance here in terms of running the university and all of the different components. And when we say that it's a pure salary increase, it's really not the same, because it's just not an apples to apples comparison in terms of what the roles and responsibilities of those individuals are. So thank you for letting me comment.
All right, thank you, George. Does anybody else have any comments on FB3? Okay, hearing none. Regent Brinkley, would you please call the vote?
Yes, sir. Regent Bale,
Yes.
Regent Ball,
Yes.
Regent Brinkley is yes. Regent Ernst,
Yes.
Regent Harris,
Yes.
Regent Higdon,
Yes.
Regent Henson,
Yes.
Regent McKinney,
Yes.
and Regent Nichols.
Yes.
Chair McKinney, vote is 9-0 on FB3. Motion carries.
Thank you, sir. All right, the last action item on our agenda is FB4, approval and authorization for the privatization of the WKU store. Do I hear a motion for this item?
So moved.
Thank you, Linda. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bale. All right, do we have any discussion or comments on FB4?
I have a comment, a question, if that's all right.
Yes, sir.
When we talk about the guaranteed revenue or the new investment, I don't want to say windfall, but the financial benefit that is linked to the university in the first year of operation under Barnes and Noble, is that full amount of money being considered to offset the proposed budget deficit?
No, that was not part of the BEC recommendation.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Regent Brinkley, would you please call the vote?
Regent Bale,
Yes.
Regent Ball,
Yes.
Regent Brinkley is no. Regent Ernst,
No.
Regent Harris,
Yes.
Regent Higdon,
Yes.
Regent Henson,
Yes.
Regent McKinney,
Yes.
Regent Nichols,
Yes.
Chair McKinney, vote is 7-2, motion carries.
All right, thank you very much. All right, the next item on our agenda is the budget development update that everybody was so eager to get to today.
I gotta say, in all my years in higher education, I don't think I've ever seen people so anxious to get to the budget. That was pretty funny.
Before you get started, I would like to make a couple of comments. I just want to thank everybody involved in the process so far. I've been critical of the budget approval process in the past, but this has definitely been the most transparent and inclusive that the process has been since I joined. Previously, we would have just been presented these items with the full budget right before we were to vote on it. But this time we have a team that provided suggestions, and the team included representation from all communities on campus. Those suggestions have been presented to faculty, staff, students, and the Regents so that we could provide our thoughts and have some input at the early stage of the process before the budget was fully formed and presented. So in my opinion, this is a great example of shared governance, exactly how the budget should be done. So go ahead, Sue.
Okay, so thank you, Jason. Mike or Anthony, could you all go back a couple of slides? Okay, I think we went through that one. So next slide. Okay, so we were going through the governance committee membership structure to illustrate the inclusiveness of these committees across campus. So the capital allocation committee, again, is chaired by Brian Russell, our chief facilities officer. It includes Corinne Murphy, Dean of College of Education, Dean Arbuckle, the Dean of the Ogden College of Science and Engineering, Jennifer Tugas, who is our interim assistant VP for business services, Travis Wilson, the department head of applied human sciences. Oh, I'm going to kill names here. Mark
Giampa, it's Italian.
Thank you, President Caboni. Faculty in Information Systems, Kimberly Nesler, a staff Senate representative, Ken Branch, the Director of Facilities Management, Jessica Steenbergen, the Scheduling Applications Coordinator within the Office of the Provost, Amy Fugate, who is our Director of Accounting and Financial Reporting, and Craig Biggs, who is our Associate Athletic Director. Next slide. And this is the composition of the Budget Executive Committee, and co-chaired by myself and Provost Stevens. We have Dean Snyder, Dean Basta, Julie Shadowan, Chair of the University Senate, Brian Kuster, the VP Enrollment and Student Experience, Laura Delancey, Faculty Senate Rep, Mike Loftus, Chair of the Staff Senate, Dan Clark, Faculty Senate Representative, Garrett Edmonds, Student Government Association Rep, Rebecca Russell, and Becca is our Interim Budget Director. She and LaDonna, who is the Associate VP for Academic Budget Administration, are the two basically ex officio or non-voting. So next slide. So this takes you through the overall timeline for the budget development. And let's just say at best, this is a very unique year as we all hear unprecedented times. So the budget activity started in earnest back in September, and where we established the budget governance committees that I just went through. Then in October through December, we started meeting as committees and started having budget hearings with support units. In January through February of this year, the primary academic unit budget request submissions were submitted up and discussed. February and March, that was the original pre-COVID revenue and expense forecasting and original tuition and fee setting discussions. Then, as we all know, our lives changed considerably in March as we began to respond to the COVID-19. So the BEC started meeting in basically emergency meetings to revise the budget projections in a very short order. knowing that we needed to present a budget recommendation to the Regents in May. So really a shout out to that group. They did phenomenal work in an environment that was literally changing on a daily basis. And I really cannot overstate when I say changing on a daily basis. I know we originally thought that the current year we were doing really well, and we still continue to do well. But then the next day, we learned from the state that we were getting a current year budget reduction. So that changed, and that was like on a Thursday, and we had to have these recommendations done about 3 days later. So I had to reconvene the group to once again talk about yet another revision. So finally, the budget recommendation from the BEC was finalized and sent to campus leadership for consideration. So in early May, campus leadership started communicating these recommendations with the Board of Regents and the campus governance groups. So for the rest of the year, May and early June, we'll be actively monitoring enrollment, revenue, and our expenditure forecast, with finalizing a budget in June to bring to the Board of Regents. Next slide. And this basically just shows, this kind of outlines that collaborative process and all of the input from the support unit leadership, primary unit leadership, into the operating allocation, then into the budget executive committee, the capital allocation committee, into the budget executive committee. It's important to note that we do have constituency representation on the budget executive committee. That recommendation again went to campus leadership and is now being shared with the Regents. Next slide. So going into projected revenues. Next slide. So it's disappointing because prior to COVID-19, we were poised to manage through a relatively minor decline in operating revenues. And that decline was basically because of smaller classes working through the enrollment pipeline based on prior year enrollment decline. So you have a smaller sophomore class, a smaller junior class, and a smaller senior class. The great news though, and I think the board and the Regents should be extremely excited that there's probably not many institutions in the country that can say that we have included in the original budget projection additional 200 freshman students, and that increase continues to hold today. And so phenomenal work from our enrollment management team led by Brian Kuster. Really, that is just phenomenal that we can do that as an institution. And we're just seeing signs that the kids really, really do want to come back to campus. Our parking permit sales are off the, out of the roof. And so all the projections are still really good for those students to come to our campus. Unfortunately, as I said, in March, the world changed and the BEC had to factor in the budgetary impacts of COVID-19, which were approximately additional decline of about 20 million. So additional tuition and fee decline of 12 million, a projected 10% reduction in state appropriation of 7.3. And again, because of the cancellation of spring sporting events, a reduction in Conference USA revenue of 500,000. Next slide. And quickly looking at the expenditure side of the budget, the recommendation includes to fund our faculty promotions and minor health insurance increases. I think the campus has done a remarkable job of holding our fixed costs down. Brian Russell in facilities through utility management, Christy Smith in the finance office, looking at all of our insurances that have to be renewed. We've been able to keep those relatively flat. The revenue dependent units, this is important to keep in mind. These units will be expected to manage to declines they may see in their revenues. So next slide. So this is what it looks like. Your projected revenue of 356 million, projected expenditures of 383 million, with an anticipated shortfall of 27 million. So finally, next slide, moving into the BEC recommended budget balancing strategies. So the BEC, to their credit, took basically a two-pronged balancing strategy to tackling this budget. And I think that's important, particularly as we move into the new ramp model, that not all of the strategies are going to be top down. There's going to be a group of division managed strategies that's a bottom-up approach that our deans and vice presidents will be expected to manage too. So the centrally managed reductions will be or I should say recommendations at this point, a $2 million savings target through a continued pause on hiring that we started in March. $6 million target through strategic reductions in travel. Now, the reason I say strategic is some travel we will have to allow. For example, recruiters. We will want those recruiters to actually go out and recruit new students to our campus. Philanthropy, Amanda and her team to go out and fundraise to raise money for campus. 2.5 million in performance improvement and cost saving strategies. This is just as a matter of fact, we have the steering committee meeting on Tuesday of next week, just a laundry list of savings that we have identified. On a low end of implementation, about 8 million. On a high end, somewhere between 15 and 16 million. And so we thought applying 2.5 million of those in this budget was conservative and prudent. We're also applying an additional portion of the fiscal year carry forward of 6 million. So this brings the total centrally managed strategies to 18.9 million. As you can see, we've taken off the tiered salary reductions and we've simply moved that down into the division managed target of 10.5 million. And we are currently working through basically guiding principles, how those division managed reductions, basically a guardrails to help the deans and vice presidents manage through that. Excuse me. Next slide. Next steps. First, as I said, the president, provost, and myself are currently developing unit allocations. The provost and I have come to some agreement to split between administration and academic. And then the president and I will set those targets for the administrative units. Provost Stevens and her staff will help allocate targets to the academic units. I can't overstate the importance of the next one, is just the continuation of monitoring of all of these revenue projections to include state appropriation. Next Friday, a week from today, will be a very important day for our state appropriation. The state consensus forecasting group will reconvene to revisit the current year revenue projections, along with the revenue projections for which next year's budget was built on. So we are planning for a 1% reduction in the current year. Some believe it could be a bit higher, given that April receipts were down 33% from last year's April receipts. But again, we'll know more next Friday from that. We are working to finalize the revenue dependent budget details. And as I said earlier, we will present a final budget to the regents at our June meeting. So that is all I have. President Caboni, I would look to you and Provost Stevens to see if you have anything additional to add.
Well, Susan, let me add to Chair McKinney's comments around the broad participation in this process. We've worked hard the past 3 years to build a process that is more inclusive, that is more transparent, that involves the total campus community. And I think when you look at the list of individuals who are involved, the amount of time we've had to take a look at the BEC recommendations, the responsiveness to governance questions and concerns, and the ongoing work that we'll do with leadership and the Board of Regents. I think this is an exemplary process, and as transparent as I've seen at any institution. And so I appreciate the hard work that all of those individuals who gave of their service time to participate in the budget process. It is difficult work. It is stressful work. And there is pressure from constituencies to do what's in the best interest of your constituency. I will remind folks the balance here is also to do what's in the best interest of the institution. And so I think that the recommendations we've received are strong. We'll continue to work through them, but I'm thankful for all of those engaged in the process and for the partnership of our governance organizations who continue to share important feedback that we'll take into account as we move through the rest of the process.
So Cheryl, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Not really. I absolutely concur. I thought that the process was inclusive. We have representatives from each of the governance bodies on these committees, and through them and the dissemination of information in both directions, we have made some adjustments to what we've done, and we understand from them what some of the concerns are, and we've addressed many of those within the committees. So it has been a very functional process. These are very complicated things, and you can't have 500 people in the room having these discussions, but we try very hard to disseminate information down and then listen as it comes back. I think while as difficult and stressful as that has been, I think that what's ahead of us is just as difficult, if not harder, as we think about how we're going to address these deficits within our units.
So Jason, I would like to give a couple of thanks. Becca Russell has done a phenomenal job for campus as interim budget director. We lost our budget director back in the fall. I had brought Becca up from IT to be the division budget manager. I quickly had to pivot, just like we have been with this budget, and turn to her to appoint her as interim budget director. And she's really just done a really, really nice job, as has LaDonna on the provost side. So thanks to those people.
All right, thank you, Susan. Do any of the regents have any questions or comments for Susan?
I have a quick question, and I'm not going to belabor this during the meeting. We can discuss it later. The BEC really didn't do anything related to the budget. They did stuff related to the reduction of the budget, right? I mean, has the budget changed, or is this just a $27 million number that is the result of the BEC meetings?
No, the budget's certainly changed. As I said earlier, we were managing through a small, about 1.5% decline in operating revenues from, as I said, the smaller classes working through the pipeline. It was then, once the COVID-19 hit the world, the BEC started having to make projections around changes in operating revenues. So what we did, David, is we developed a green scenario, a yellow scenario, and a red scenario of basically once COVID-19 came to life, where did we think we were going to land? A green scenario of a 5% decline in enrollment, a yellow of a 10% decline in enrollment, or a red, which is almost unthinkable of where we might find ourselves. So the committee, the BEC decided to go with a kind of a green-yellow scenario that included the decline in enrollment, the smaller decline in enrollment, seeing our enrollments are holding pretty well at this time, and the 10% decline in state appropriation. So that's how that was done.
And I just want to, the part of this that bothers me is, and I just want to, I've hesitated to say this, we're counting on the legislature that approved a 1-year budget, not a 2-year budget, but a 1-year budget, because they normally do 2-year. We're counting on the legislature to not fulfill their commitment to higher education, correct?
Well, I think you and I have talked about this, or at least maybe at the staff senate, one of the staff senate briefings. So what happens, David? There's basically statutes, Kentucky statutes, that you have this consensus forecasting group, and if revenue, who I said is reconvening next Friday, if the revenue projections or the revenue forecast changes from what the original budget was developed on, the governor is required by law to take budgetary action to get the budget back into balance. I mean, that's in statute. So this is what happens is that now he can take actions up to a 5% decline in revenue. Once it goes over 5%, the governor has to reconvene the legislative body in a special session to do anything higher than 5%.
Wow. I appreciate your answer. That helps me remember that clarity. And I do remember a meeting where that was partially discussed, and I appreciate your elaboration on that. I still, so let's imagine that let's imagine the legislature fulfills the commitment that they made to higher education and fully funds the money that they have voted in the 1-year coming fiscal year budget. Let's look at, say, the 10.5 million in unit reductions. Would that then be credited by 7.3 million, or would that have to go through some other process?
Well, that's something I did fail to say, which I think is important for the Regents to hear. So the BEC, they've completed their work on this budget. They've made their recommendations to leadership. What we are using the committee for now is to develop contingency plans around what would happen for those types of scenarios, David, that you mentioned. What if we got more money than we thought? What if our enrollment didn't drop? And then on the other end, what if we turn more like that red facing scenario? What would we do then? Because again, as I talk about the campus having to pivot very quickly, if we come back to campus in August and enrollments are not what we projected, we have to once again pivot very quickly. So those are the type of contingency plans that that body is working on right now.
Susan, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Did the BEC explicitly approve moving the 2.4 million of tiered salary reductions out of this category?
No, the BEC did not, Klaus. As a matter of fact, we took their recommendation, but at this point in the process, that lives with campus leadership. And the conversations that I've had with governance, that Susan's had with governance, that Cheryl has, and listening to the comments and the conversations, it seems to me that that is just something that the campus was not interested in doing. And so because of that, managing through in a way that follows our decentralized budget process, devolving control and responsibility to unit heads seemed like the best way for us to manage through that.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. And so we now have 10.5 million, which essentially still will have to be announced how this will actually be accomplished. What I'm very much afraid of is that once you move these reduction targets down to units, that they will have very little choice but to react with personnel reduction. Why? Well, because this already happened to some extent with the last reduction target, and I can't see how units can avoid that. The Faculty Senate has overwhelmingly voted for a concept of shared sacrifice, meaning that there's a preference of some salary reduction versus some layoffs, right? And it seems to me like that the decision is essentially that we will reduce personnel, because I don't see any other way how the 10.5 million can be accomplished.
Well, Klaus, as I mentioned early with my first comment around budgets and the way in which one manages through these things, I think it is not strategic to announce on a single day all the decisions that an institution is going to make. Good strategic leadership and good in higher education administration, in the business world, good management says, I'm going to manage to a number. I'm going to do cost avoidance. I'm going to take advantage of things that present themselves along the way. And I'm not going to tie my hands with what I'm going to do or not do today. And that's the reason we hire deans. It's the reason we hire vice presidents, is to manage through challenging times, but in hard times, but also in good times, making strategic choices about where reductions occur, but also where at some point in the future, where additional revenue is allocated. So I appreciate the concern. I do think that the pushback and the comments and the suggestions were not as concise, I think, as what you described. I appreciate the Faculty Senate's desire for shared sacrifice. You all have heard from me, dear Regents, that I thought that we would have a similar kind of activity. But again, given the feedback that we've gotten, Susan, Cheryl, and I think this is the place where we allow our leaders that we've hired to lead. And we do that at a place where they know best what their organization can endure.
Can I also add, so, you know, academic affairs is a different kind of structure than many of the other administrative units. And some of the discussion that we've had with the deans, that I've had with the deans, is that within academic affairs, once we know what our budget target is, that we might have some academic affairs wide strategies that we apply. We haven't determined what those might be yet. We have sort of a laundry list of things that we could apply across all colleges. So rather than making some of these decisions at the very local level, it is still possible that we'll make some kind of across the academic affairs unit decisions. I honestly don't know how this will play out, but as we have some university-wide strategies, we could also have some academic affairs-wide strategies. And we will have many discussions about what fits us best.
Thank you both. I understand what you're telling me. From my perspective, I just have to wait and see how the 10.5 million will be distributed.
Can I just comment? These are excellent questions, and I commend Dr. Carboni, Susan, the leadership, going through the process you've gone through. I would assume all of us are reading everything that's out there about how to respond about something that we know nothing about in terms of how the future is going to play out. And I hope that as a governance board, what our role is do we feel comfortable that the leadership of the university has put together a good plan for what we know today. And that's all it is, what we know today. The situation could change very quickly, which would change state revenue issues, change factors of people deciding whether they want to come on campus or not, change related to faculty, change related to staff. And I just, you know, the point that Tim made that I think is important is, like, you know, we have a plan, and you can lay a lot of scenarios out, but until they play out, that's all they are, is scenarios. And being someone who has to run a college, and I'm fortunate that I run an online college, we too still are struggling with people's reaction to this. And it's more than just our planning process. We're dealing with something that goes far beyond us, which is how will students, how will parents respond about whether or not I'm sending my kid off to college. And forget about all your models, forget about all the scenarios. And if there's an additional spike that happens, everything changes. And so, you know, Klaus, you're right. We got to wait and see how it plays out. But I do hope that as a governance committee, we recognize that we're in a territory that none of us have ever seen in our lifetime. And every decision that we make is based on what information is in front of us today that very, very quickly could change. And so we have to, be open-minded to that and not be so wedded that here's what we're saying today, because again, we don't control so many of the variables that are at play in this one.
I fully agree, and nobody should misunderstand me that I'm advocating for salary reduction. That's not my point. But all I wanted to state that the Senate has explicitly voted that they would prefer such a concept over laying off of faculty.
And I would tell you, I would agree with that. The thing that I hope we don't do is I hope we make decisions where that we can absorb losses as opposed to hurting our faculty and staff, who really is what keeping us going. And so I fully support that. That to me is the last option that we do. But again, it's still so many factors we just don't control in this one.
And I think, George, along with that, I think what we're trying to do, at least what I'm trying to do, is make sure that the weight of these decisions is echoed from my representative standpoint. That's it. I mean, I know the hard work that's gone into this. I don't know. I assume that it's been a lot of sleepless nights, the same sleepless nights that I've had once I got the summary of information of reductions, trying to work through, part of the challenge we have is I'm working through information based on what I've been given only, not the totality of everything available, because that's the nature of this, right? The decisions are made, we're given summaries, and we make decisions. Yet my phone, my email has not stopped since the initial numbers came out because of shock from, what I've heard described multiple times as a great picture that was painted in mid-April of where we stand financially to, roughly $10 million of people losing their jobs. And we can call the 10.5 whatever we want, but ultimately that's a lot of people. And we can talk about salary reductions and the issues related to those, especially with people getting ready to retire. I mean, I've seen a list of questions just from the staff that are just, and the questions and the comments are based on the summaries that they've been presented. That's it. And so the lack of information that has generated this type of questioning, I think is okay. It's warranted. And I think the severity of the comments and the intensity with the comments that are coming are also warranted. So, and I agree with you. I think the last thing in the world that a university that so much has demonstrated the value in faculty and staff would do everything it could to not reduce that number any further following what happened a couple of years ago. So especially as we vote to improve the pay scale for the faculty that deserve it, and we increase some staff salaries by as much as $40,000 or $50,000 or $80,000 in one vote. So, I want to make sure that we manage it all as well.
That is fair. I think there's probably four people. I know everybody's stressed. I don't envy your role, David. I don't envy Klaus's role. I don't envy Tim's role, and I don't envy Will's role, because you are representing a constituency and balancing that against the governance responsibilities that you have to the university. And I think all of you are doing an outstanding job doing that and representing your constituency, raising the issues and being responsive to them. And I believe we're going to get to the right answer, but it's just going to be one that we're going to get to it all together at a time when we don't know when that'll be in the future. So I appreciate and respect your work.
Concerning the comments that were made in April, I would like to say that we are financially stable when compared to other universities, especially. But that doesn't mean that when we are projecting large revenue shortfalls that we don't also have to work through those and respond to those shortfalls that are coming so that we can stay financially stable for the future.
Regent McKinney, I want to jump in real quick and speak to the board just for a little bit for some more added perspective. So ever since spring break, I have had the privilege of sitting in on the COVID-19 committee meetings. And I've also joined some of the BEC meetings to sit in on those to be a part of the discussion going on. And I've tried to get as involved and informed on all these topics as possible. That's been my main goal. And I've had a little bit of extra free time on my hands, so it's been pretty fortunate to do that. I am one of the students that would love to be back in school right now in person. And I have one last assignment that I need to submit before I'm done with school for the semester. But I wanted to speak a little bit from a student perspective and give everyone a little bit more perspective on the situation at hand. And I also wanted to really commend our leadership here at WKU for just a brief moment. And, you know, the past 2 months have been probably the hardest 2 months of any student's career. Our lives were flipped upside down in a matter of 2 weeks. Our virtual learning that we've transitioned to and the faculty that transitioned their classes in less than a week was remarkable. And seeing that transition unfold truly shows the WKU family and the community that we are. And right now that we're having this discussion, it's much needed. But the thing about the situation that I've learned over the past 2 months is anything, like Regent Nichols said, anything and everything can change at a flip of the switch. If there's another spike or if there's another situation that occurs, any of these numbers are bound to change. So these numbers could change next Friday. There's so much unknown and there's so many uncertainties that this discussion that we're having right now seems very preemptive to me. And I realize the concerns that have been voiced, and I agree. And Regent Ernst and Regent Brinkley, I feel like we're all in the same circumstances, that we're all representing 3 different groups that are all very outspoken in their own respective ways. Obviously, I'm always going to be against the tuition increase, and Regent Brinkley and Regent Ernst, it's always going to be against the reductions and departments and faculty staff reductions in that sense. It's always going to be just like that. And it's a hard discussion to have. But right now, I think we really need to focus on how we're continuing into this next phase. And once we get those numbers, I think this is a great discussion to be had. But I feel like without that information right now, it's really hard to have that discussion. So I really just wanted to take the time to commend our leadership and everything that they've done over the past 2 months. From a student perspective, President Caboni, President's Cabinet, and everyone that has been on those discussions, I'd like to say thank you all. You all have been a tremendous voice for students and showing your support in these difficult times for us. And this has been one of the most remarkable committees that I've ever got to sit on and learn from. And so I'm very thankful for this opportunity that has been presented before me. And now more than ever, that shows just how much our institution truly values the shared governance structure and the input of individuals from all across campus.
That's very nice, Will. I appreciate that, and I'm sure we all do. And as throw a bit of optimism on the conversation, let me just say with the academic restart committee, you know, there have been people on that are talking about how this is an opportunity to improve how we teach and how we learn. We've got the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning on campus, which is going to be a major asset as our faculty and staff moves forward. Some measured procrastination, as we've heard, is a good thing, and yet there come dates where we do and will have to make some hard decisions, but in the meantime, procrastination is not a bad thing. I think also we're going to be reminded of the value of on-campus learning. I heard a psychiatrist give a presentation recently about the importance of human attunement, which means the interactions that occur between individuals and creates harmony. And that's where our university and our campus has always shone brightly. So we take this crisis and we'll learn from it, and we'll sift and winnow from those lessons and find out what works for us, and Western will come out much better than most other institutions that I'm aware of. So thank you for those comments, Will.
I want to interject one final thing, and I just want to make sure everybody understands. The reason I respond and have questions is because of information that we're provided. When we use words like preemptive and assuming how people are going to vote based on preconceived notions, I think it's a really dangerous pathway to go down. You know, the weight of all of this, regardless of whether or not I've been allowed to or attended any BEC meetings, does fall on every individual's shoulders, and we feel that. We're responding to a point in time because of information that was given to us today and a week ago, right? The information provided to the board. My understanding of that information, and please, any regent correct me if I'm incorrect on this, was that once the BEC made recommendations, it was our duty to begin responding with any recommendations we might have based on the evolution of the situation, and possibly work through changes, some of which have already taken place. So I understand fully the weight of the situation that is ongoing, care deeply about the university, and wouldn't necessarily ever vote for a tuition increase. I want to make sure everybody understands that. I don't know what's on the table in front of me. And I certainly, if it was necessary, would have no problem voting for salary reductions, staffing reductions, or faculty reductions. My job is not to represent the staff. It is to represent a constituency, but do it in the best interest of the university as a whole. So I'm taking that very seriously. I'm not discounting a point in time and saying that it doesn't matter. I'm not putting it off down the road. We're dealing with it today because that's the information we were given today. That information may change tomorrow. It may change by 4 o'clock this afternoon. But we pick these points in times, and this is the meeting time. Just also for clarity, this is when we were brought together to meet and discuss this. So the idea that the discussion may be too harsh or that maybe passionate questions or concerns, I don't think that's warranted. I think that everything that we're doing is proper, it's measured, and it's very calm, I can assure you, compared to the information that has been leveled at me for the last 2 weeks.
I want to echo some of those thoughts. I mean, I have a record now of how to vote on the board, and I take my responsibility to my constituents seriously, but I also want to keep the institution as a whole very much on my mind. And so I will always vote for what I think the institution as a whole will need, even if that's not benefiting my constituency. I have one more question. I was also on this academic restart committee, and it becomes very clear that for the fall, we need to make some investments on campus in order to be ready for this changed environments. Is there any estimate of how much money we will have available to make such investments? So what I'm talking about is we may have to change some classrooms in terms of the ability of maybe stream a lecture live. We may have to erect some physical barriers. We may have to make stairways one way. And there's a lot of things we need to do in order to enable social distancing on campus. are there funds available in order to make these changes happen?
Klaus, there is some money in the CARES Act, about $500,000 that we have access to help make the campus healthy or work healthy, as the governor states. We'll certainly apply that to the cost. Brian Russell is the chair of basically the facilities opening WKU up committee, and he's collecting those cost estimates now. So we're going to make adjustments as we need to make sure that we are in compliance with the standards that the governor has laid out to open up in the fall.
Okay.
Another major area of cost is going to be testing and tracing, which is going to be crucial. If you've got students on campus, you're going to need to be doing lots of tests and lots of tracing.
If I might address that, Regent Bale, I was on a call yesterday with Governor Beshear and some of our local officials. And one of the things we've talked about is the importance of testing, contact tracing, and isolation. And those appear across some of the Restart Committee work. Along with the Barren River Health Group, we're going to work to identify ways we can cooperate on that contact tracing, where they may be Barren River employees, but they'll focus on WKU and how it is we collaborate on that. We also learned just yesterday that there may be some additional funds through the governor's office that allow us to address COVID-19 expenses focused on staying healthy at work. And then just as a final comment to Regent Ernst and Regent Brinkley in particular, I certainly appreciate and have during my entire time as president the perspective of our faculty and staff regents and our governance groups. George Nichols shared with me an article about 6 months ago, and it continues to be ever prescient in that the way we get to good decisions is by productive friction. And we're not going to agree on everything all the time. And that's a good thing because, iron sharpens iron. We get to truth by questioning over and over and over again. And as heated as it might become at any given time, what we all know is that we care about one thing, and that's this institution, its students, and its success. And so with that, I remain thankful for our collegial relationships, even though they may get heated at times, and for a process that creates in the outcome a better decision than if we had not had those conversations. And so this is part of why higher education has lasted so long. It's because we inherently are a conservative organization. We don't make, it takes a long time to get to a decision and lots of perspectives and lots of disagreement and much of it done out in the open in a messy way. And that's one of the reasons they're great organizations. And so to Klaus and David, I appreciate both of them.
I'd also like to jump in and say real quick to Regent Brinkley and Regent Ernst, I apologize with my comments. The preemptive part was in the sense that this recommendation could change for the information item next week, so we don't have the full picture. I'd like to apologize on the video if any of my comments were offensive in any way. So I'd really like to apologize to you all individually in that sense.
You have nothing to apologize for, Will. I think your comments were great.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's not a single member on this group that does not absolutely love the university. There's not even a person on this call that does not absolutely love and care for this university. I think that everything that the president just said is absolutely 100% true. I respect the opinion of everyone in this group and look forward to finding a pathway forward. I may not agree 100% with everything that was presented, the 27 million, but man, I appreciate the process and want to help and contribute to how we can find a pathway that is least obstructive for everyone here. So no apology necessary, sir.
All right. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? I definitely think this was a great discussion, and I think everybody's points have been taken into account and are very valuable to the entire process. With that, that's all we have for our Finance and Budget Committee. I turn it over to you, Chair Higdon.
Thank you, Regent McKinney. Great job. We appreciate you and your committee's work over the last few weeks. And obviously, there's much more to do. I would encourage all the regents to reach out to Jason, myself, the president, or Susan with questions so that we can go through the process and come up with appropriate decisions. During the budget presentation, I believe Regent Porter joined us. David, are you there? You may be muted, David. But anyway, David joined us, and I want to let everyone know that. Before we move into the
That was a yes
all right.
for me.
Good morning, David. The last section of our agenda today is other business and announcements. We will have our special budget approval committee meetings on June 26th. Obviously, there will be much information coming your way, much opportunity for comment and suggestions, much opportunity for interaction. So we encourage that and welcome that. Our board retreat is August 6th. I would like for the regents to think about topics for that retreat. Within the last couple of days, Regent Bell and I have had some conversations with some potential academic teaching, adaptive leadership opportunities that might be a topic for our retreat. So as you think of things, or if you would like to engage in certain items at the retreat, please make that known to us. Finally, you'll see the rest of the year meeting dates. Get those on your calendar or refresh your calendar to make sure those things are on the calendar. I appreciate everyone this morning. A great discussion, a very collaborative discussion. And I'm very proud of the regents and the opportunities that we're creating going forward. Before we wrap up, I want to turn to the president to see if he has any final comments, and then I'll go around the regents to see if there's any comments from our regents. President Caboni.
Chair Higdon, I will remind everyone to please tune in this afternoon for our conferral of degrees. It will be a quick conferral. It is the portion of the ceremony where the Board of Regents actually makes all of our students who are graduating degrees official, but there will be an opportunity for the entire community to participate. And I think the login is facebook.com/WKU conferral.
Dr. Caboni, can Julia send that out to us, please?
Yeah, I'll make sure you all get the correct
Thank you.
link. I'm trying to find it on my computer too. Julie, will you make sure that goes to where it's supposed to go?
Julia, I'll make sure you have it too if you don't.
Thanks, David.
When is that?
4 o'clock.
Anything else, sir?
No, sir. Thank you.
To the regents. Regent Ball, any questions or comments?
I would just like to commend the leadership on everything they've done during this unprecedented time. It's truly unbelievable. I'd also like to extend my deepest sympathy to Provost Stevens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Regent Bell.
I think, let me praise our chairman. He'll be known as the COVID chairman, I'm afraid, but the extra amount of work and attention all this is requiring from Chairman Higdon is immense. And I feel for him, but he has really stepped up to the plate and done a great job. Also to Provost Stevens, she's with us today, and I think that says something. She's one tough lady, and she's doing a great job too. So,
Thank you, sir. Regent Brinkley.
One housekeeping item, Julia McDonald, I have a manual record of the votes that can correspond with your record, and we can merge them as I'll send that to you shortly, so you'll have all
Thanks.
of that to make sure that we have it verified. And Dr. Stevens, I am so sorry for your loss. I appreciate the very difficult position this puts you in, and commend you for being here today, given the circumstances. And I'm happy to have a double oaked glass with you anytime you wish. Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Will Harris.
Happy last day of class for everyone. It's the end of the semester, so thank you all for a great year. If you all didn't know, SGA is delaying the elections until September, once we're back in person, at least whenever that is. And, you know, we'll be back in the fall, but whenever we're back in the fall, we'll have the elections, and there'll be a new president elected and a new student regent elected. Until then, you all are stuck with me, unfortunately. But thank you all again for everything today. Provost Stevens, I'd also like to express my condolences. And, you know, I'm here on campus. If you ever need anything, I don't know what I can do for you, but if there's ever anything I can do for you, I'm always here for you. So.
Regent Ernst.
I want to thank you all for your work you do for WKU. In particular, I want to thank the provost for making it possible to move these degree programs through in a timely fashion so they can be offered in the fall. And of course, it's remarkable that you're here. And my condolences to your loss.
Thank you. Regent Julie Harris Henson.
Cheryl, you're in my thoughts and prayers, and I will tell you all, it always does my heart good to see you all. It's just always nice to be in touch. Thank you.
Regent Nichols.
I too add, Cheryl, my condolences and my prayers. I think that this is a great group of people committed to Western Kentucky University. I'm honored to serve with each and every one of you. And I tell people all the time that if you're going to be a part of an organization, there's three things you got to make sure that works. One is it's mission driven. Second, that it has the right value system. And then third is the culture. And I think all of those things we have in terms of what we're trying to do on behalf of the university. So thank you all, and please, everybody stay safe and well and healthy.
Thank you, sir. Regent Porter.
Well, I want to say that I think our current board and faculty and staff is number one, and maybe one of the best situations we've had since I've been on the board. And I know Freddie and I are the old guys on the board at this point. I think it's impressive how everyone's working together on all the issues and the problems and the adjustments that have to be made. And I look forward to the June meeting, and appreciate all of your all's focus and interest on this, and it's just very, I'm very proud to have the board members like you, and have enjoyed working with you all. Cheryl, my thoughts and prayers are with you, and Dr. Cavoni, I think you've done a very excellent job. We knew we had a good, we knew we made a good decision early on, but we appreciate all of your work and efforts.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, David. Regent McKinney?
I'd like to reiterate everything that was, all the comments to Dr. Stevens, especially David Brinkley's bourbon drink comment. I'd also like to thank Deborah Wilkins for her years of service as general counsel and all the great things she's done for the university.
Oh my God.
I look forward to seeing what she does in her new role, and also want to congratulate Andrea on her new position. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone? Again, much appreciations to the Regents.
I have the correct link.
Okay, update from the president on the correct link.
I just made that other link up. Don't go there. I don't know what it will bring up on your computer. It's wku.edu/WKU News, or youtube.com/WKU News. So go to WKU News.
Again, Provost Stevens, thank you, and our sympathy and condolences. We appreciate you, and help us get through these budget times. Susan, you've been a true warrior. It's miraculous that you're on board with us, and we thank you for your hard work and being so responsive to all of the constituencies on campus. Congratulations to the new folks. If there's nothing else, then we stand adjourned. Be safe. See you soon.